No, I haven't done a Pursuit and Truth for a long time, but I was just listening to the speech on the Commons. I'll talk about it later. I'll let you listen to it first so you can make your own opinion.
Risks and costs. The risks to life and the costs to businesses and families, which are both substantial and deeply worrying to every single member of this House. But it's also a debate about facts. What are the facts? And here we know that our debate in this country, and indeed across the world, about how to handle this epidemic is disputed by some. And it is a dispute in which the truth and the uncertainty, because some of this is all about scientific uncertainty, wrestle with the plainly false. And it is about the impact of that on vaccination that I want to say a few words today. For months now, we have lived through restrictions. We have seen people die. We have seen our local businesses suffer. And from time to time, we have lifted our eyes to the horizon in the hope of glimpsing something that is a bit better. Well, something has now appeared. To use a seasonal analogy, in the dark winter sky, there are 3 new stars have appeared, and they are the 3 new vaccines which have been developed and are awaiting approval. And as has been said already, every single one of us owes an enormous debt of gratitude to the scientists and the volunteers who took part, and to all of the people in the NHS, local authorities, our forces and others, who, as we speak, are making preparation for the mass vaccination programme to come. But that too is disputed by some people, although I think it's really important, Madam Deputy Speaker, we distinguish between the conspiracy theorist anti-vaxxers on the one hand and those who have genuine questions and concerns on the other. Now, it may seem incredible to every single one of us that there are people who believe those conspiracy theories, one of which apparently is that governments wish to inject us all with microchips. Given the problems there have been with handling other aspects of the epidemic, I don't think any government of the world would have the capability to do that. It is, of course, complete nonsense, but more seriously, we remember the huge anxiety that was caused by the false claim that autism was caused by the MMR vaccine. Now, that study was eventually discredited, the doctor responsible struck off, but the damage had been done, and the anti-vax conspiracy theorists are still touting their lethal wares around the internet. The fact is that vaccination has saved millions and millions of lives since Edward Jenner developed the first successful vaccine in 1796. And in the last 30 years, vaccination against polio has almost eradicated that terrible disease. There are just 2 countries left in the world where it still exists, Pakistan and Afghanistan, and that is in part down to some people who have killed brave health workers who were only trying to save the lives of children. And therefore, anything and everything, and I say this to the Health Secretary, that can be done to take on those who spread falsehoods will have the full support of this House. But it is also a fact that there are people who have genuine questions and concerns. And I just say it's really important that we provide as much information as possible so people can weigh up the facts, talk to their GPs and make a decision. Now, I welcome the decision that vaccination will not be compulsory. It should not be compulsory. But nor should we forget that it is both a fact and the truth that the more of us who are vaccinated, the better the chance we have of defeating this disease. So, Madam Deputy Speaker, subject to the regulators saying they are safe, I, for one, will be queuing with my sleeve rolled up when the time comes.
David. That was Hilary Benn MP, the son of Tony Benn MP. And it's interesting how he uses the way he speaks. He used certain enunciations and techniques when he talked about conspiratorial theorists, and how he used the word truth. There was a lot of inflection done on his speech, which is probably not actually thought of when he was writing his speech, but just when you speak it, when you believe those things, people tend to speak in a certain way when they want to put down things, when they want to put up things. It just interests me the bit about when he talked about falsehood, people who are touting falsehood. Well, I hope he doesn't use that for anti-vaxxers What about the rest of the MPs that have lied? Tony Blair, for one, to hit the country of the weapons of mass destruction, being in Iraq, the fact that they could launch in 45 minutes, those kinds of lies. The MPs that have lied, the GPs that have lied, the pharmaceutical lies when it comes to Primodos, a drug that was brought out for pregnant women to tell if they were pregnant or not, but caused malformations, and the pharmaceutical companies still don't admit that they were part of that. And that's just one of these things. The Northern Ireland blood transfer where they got HIV. You know, there's many of these things. So what about those? You know, will he feel the same that, you know, the people who've lied when they were pharmaceutical companies and they put through things that they said were safe, in the, you know, efficacy was okay, and yet we now find out after years and years of the parents fighting for this and being told no by governments and pharmaceutical companies and GPs that no, there was no link, and now when they found a link, that's the worrying thing. That's why I think people are worried. I mean, I know the problem is when you get into this area of truth and lies, and I don't like using the word conspiracy because that's an FBI term to sort of, if you use that term, then suddenly those people can be looked down and spat upon, or judged as intellectual buffoons. I'm sure that Hilary Benn, listening to my Pursuit of Truth, would think that I was an anti-vaxxer or trying to put across falsehood when I'm not. I have the vaccination, and I didn't have it this year, but last year I had it. Well, no, it did give me that cough for a whole year, although I can't prove that it was that or not. But although now I may have asthma. Well, that's what they're thinking now. There may be some form of asthma, but I don't see it because I only had a cough. I didn't have any other symptoms. But where that came from, I don't know. But the thing I'm trying to say is there are people that are outlandish on the internet who will make claims and are always suspicious and have then fallen into the same trap that they're trying to get out of. You know, by not actually looking at facts, because it's easy to say, oh, well they're putting, you know, Bill Gates is putting microchips in people, and you know, when they hear it from someone else, and then they start spreading it, and they say this is what's happening, whereas they've never even investigated, because that's the important thing. That's what truthers should be doing. That's the difference that we should be doing and making, is that we don't just believe things because we hear it on television. We know that humanity lies. It is a trait within us all that we lie, and that some people do it for money. What was the reason why Primodos was put out when they knew, the government knew, when pharmaceutical companies knew that it had this problem? Why did they put it out? They put it out because of money. Early in this year you heard Matt Hancock talking about when they were looking for testing people before the test and trace fiasco, for just doing tests to see whether they had the COVID-19 strain or not. And there were pharmaceutical companies that were trying to sell them stuff that 3 times out of 4 didn't work. Why were they selling that stuff when they meant to do efficacy and checks and all that kind of thing, checks and balances, and it's meant to be safe for us? Why were they selling something that 3 times out of 4 failed? Because of money, because they want to make money. And it's only because it was checked that it wasn't bought. But you can see how the problem with having medicine connected with money, because people will do almost anything for money. And that's where the problem comes in, that's where the doubt comes in, that's why there are people out there, you know, when they talked about the MMR linked to autism, was it Dr. Andrew Wakefield, was it? Who made the assertion. Now, just because he was struck off, well, that could be the pharmaceutical company. Remember that who runs the MHRA? Who funds the MHRA? The pharmaceutical companies fund it. I mean, that's a bit like if you were doing an exam in school and you've got the parent of that child to then mark their exam. So there's problems with that. And that was even on Sky News, but they keep forgetting about that when they want to talk about, everyone should get vaccinated. The other day I heard that was what the plan is now, to vaccinate the whole world. And that sent chills up me, because I was thinking, like, is this what this was all about, this COVID-19 thing? I mean, we know it's bad. We know it's killing people. I mean, I haven't met anyone yet who's had it that I could verify or died of it, but that doesn't mean it doesn't happen. But I do know that previous to COVID-19, vaccinations have been dropping, and that this is very helpful to pharmaceutical companies in picking up that now, because everyone's going to want this vaccination. Not everyone, the anti-vaxxers won't, but most people are going to have this vaccination because they'd be scared. Even though we know that the percentage of people dying is, I don't know how much percent is it. There was 40,000, is it 50,000 now in the UK have died? Out of 600 million, I don't know what percent of that is, probably less than 1% of people that who caught it and died. The percent of people who've actually caught it is a lot higher than that, and then most of them didn't die. But the problem is you don't know, and that's where it works. That's the beauty of this. And I'm not saying this is a conspiratorial thing, but that's just how we work as human beings. Because it's like a roulette, you don't want to take the chance, so you'll take the jab instead. Now, I don't know whether there's nefarious things going on with this, like the microchip thing or whatever, or it's just a way of making money. Who knows even how accurate, how good it is? They say it's 94%. Who knows how they've worked out their figures? When you know pharmaceutical companies will hide things. So that's the problem. That's the problem. Especially in this generation now, because we've seen Primodos, we've seen these other things that have happened. The POA, the Teflon thing, lots of these issues. And of course governments, since the Iraq and Afghanistan war, I think that changed people's mindsets when we got involved in that illegal war. The lies that were told about it has made us see that politicians, and there's lots of TV programs now that are showing these things. Like when you watch something like The Crown, it shows you the corruption that goes on within royalty, within governments, against each other, against the people. So yeah, I think it would be an insane person who wouldn't be worried about getting injected with some toxin that they don't know whether it's being done to benefit them or whether it's being done for money. Because this is going to make these pharmaceutical companies a lot of money. If it's like they were talking about polio. There obviously are lots of things that medicine helps, and this is where I get a problem with some truthers that maybe sort of want to say that everything is bad. I mean, I don't know whether it is or isn't, but what is the evidence to say that it is? We all know that we all take vaccinations. People have medical conditions and they take tablets and they get better, and you see that's evidence, I guess, of course, you could say that their immune system was always going to fight it off and the tablet didn't do anything, but the problem is without a medical background, without blood diagnosis and x-rays and all sorts of things, how do you actually verify that? For you to make a claim that, oh no, it would have happened without any kind of evidence, or without you having done any of that kind of technical stuff, you're doing the thing that we complain about, non-truthers do, or governments do, where they just say whatever they want to say without any evidence. Just they say it in a bombastic way, and then you'll believe. Well, we don't want to believe anymore. We want to know what's the facts, what's truth. That's the most important thing. And so if we make claims, we need to make sure we have that evidence. Not that we heard someone on YouTube talk about it. Even if you say, like, for the MMR autism thing, even if David, was it Andrew Wakefield, or what was his name, Dr. Wakefield, said, this is what happened, blah, 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 and there is a link. How do we know he's telling the truth? Just because we can't fall into confirmation bias. Just because we want to hear it, then we're just going to believe it. Because that's the problem, isn't it? Like, believe, a lot of people, a lot of truthers write about believe that it contains the word lie in it. It does contain it, doesn't it? Yeah. So we've got to be careful that we're not. There can be fallacy within belief. So I get why these politicians and the people, it's a big problem now, because there's a mix, especially YouTube, there's a mix of lies and truth. But I don't think it's just YouTube. You see, the media and the politicians like to just talk about YouTube and the internet as being a mix of falsehoods and lies and truth. But that's the same with the media, that's the same with government, that's the same with human beings. That's the problem. Human beings, you can have 10 human beings in front of you and there will be a mix of lies and truth tellers. And you don't know which is telling you the truth and which is lying. And the problem, that's the greatest thing to do as a human being, is to be able to discern which is fact and which is fiction, which is falsehood, which is truth. And we've got to be careful that we don't just say, oh, all vaccinations are bad, or, what if, because like I hear people say about COVID not being real. I mean, I think it is real, but the threat, the fear of it has been 1984'd, it's been whipped up to make us fearful. And like they said on the news, they said that this generation will be the most compliant generation. And the current generation is probably the least compliant, because there's lots of riots, there's lots of protests, there's lots of people talking against governments, there's lots of people wanting change. And maybe this is part of this thing, whether COVID was made in a laboratory and then stuck in Wuhan, whether it was Wuhan that made it, whether it was naturally done. The fact is that human beings now will be very compliant because they're being told to obey, and if they don't obey they get fined or they get shamed. So it is a very worrying time for people who want truth, because they can get hidden up with, mixed in with conspiratorial theorists. But yeah, it's just how do you know what is true and what's not? Like with COVID-19, is it just a flu, a variation of a flu that's worse, and the fear's just been worked up, or is it truly worse than flu, as it were, its own special? Well, it is a coronavirus, so it is like a cold, but it's a killer cold. I don't know how you would call it, but is it really is? Well, we know it's not, because it's only killing 1%, or is it less than 1%? I don't know worldwide how much percentage. How many is it? Is it 1 million people, over 1 million now, that have died out of how many? 7 billion people. I mean, that's not even 1%, is it? So put it in perspective. It isn't as. I mean, I'm sure that car accidents, alcohol, drugs, probably kill people more, but we're not in confinement over them. So it may be that it's a real thing, but governments and pharmaceutical companies are using it to the best of their interest to make money, to take control. And also, we don't know the links between these pharmaceutical companies and politicians. That's the problem. A lot of people pick at Man Hancock that he has a pharmaceutical background. Are there, like that the bridge that Joanna Lumley wanted built in London, that Boris Johnson was the mayor of, where they just drew plans and they spent I don't know how much money, but no bridge has ever been built. But where's all that money gone to? So is it to serve their own, to go into their own pockets or their own friends' pockets, because it keeps them funded, because lots of governments are funded by rich people? So that's the problem. We don't know, like, all the links of these pharmaceutical companies and politicians and people of interest that know each other. So yeah, I can see why people are worried, but the problem is this, like I say from the very beginning, this is the thing. This is the important thing that I think, they miss, Hilary Benn and people like that miss out, that we have to be thinkers, but we have to be. How do we know? How do we know we can trust what's being put in our arm? Just because, like I would think that most doctors do it, become doctors because they want to heal people, they want to help people. They saw someone die, and I don't think that's untrue. I think most medical people do want to help, do want to save lives. But maybe there's that 1% that don't, that want to make money, that want to have control and power. So and it depends who's in charge, who's making the decisions, who's making the money. So that's the problem. How do you know? I mean, I don't know, I say this so many times, and when I look at all the things that I talk about in these pursuits of truth, it's the problem that I always come up with. Because if you want an easy life, you just believe the media, you just believe the politicians, you just believe the authorised truth. But then that's easy for you to be fooled. We've all seen 1984 and other novels and even in real life. I don't even need fiction. We've all seen real life events where we've been told things and found out them to be untrue and lies. Maybe not at the same time, but later on. And that's like the problem I always come back to, is we all know that human beings lie. If people want us to believe more, take money out of medicine, or take money out completely, and then there won't be that. Because why would anyone make a drug that doesn't work? I mean, then there would be a serial killer, or there'd be a psychopath. But I'm sure there's less of them. But why, if you have money in it, then that's the incentive, isn't it? Oh, let's just take a few of those stats out. Yeah, it's 84%. Take 3 of those stats out. Oh, now it's 94% efficient. Burn those ones. It's easy to fake things. We've all seen the numbers, how the numbers of the dead, the way that doctors said that people died of COVID without actually having proper tests. The proper tests don't even work. There's a lot of errors in the tests where the false positives and etc. and the other way around. So that it's easy to come up with what you want to come up with: lies, damn lies, and statistics. And once you have like the problem, reaction, solution, problem being COVID-19, the reaction being how the media is whipping it up and politicians whipping it up, showing that the people dying, their stories, making you fearful, people emptying shops for toilet rolls and etc. You don't go out just in case, wear a mask, otherwise you might catch it. Like I'm sure this happened in the bubonic plague, or the Spanish flu, as it was called. Assuming those historical events are actually true. But let's not get into history being written by the victors and how accurate it is. But that's the problem, isn't it? That's the problem. It is the fundamental problem to all of this. Well, money and lies. Maybe actually money wouldn't be such a problem if we weren't able to lie, or didn't find the need to lie because of the benefit of money or power. Maybe that is the pursuit of truth. That I've reached the end of my pursuit of truth because I found the problem for everything. And that is that human beings have the function to lie. And can we ever eradicate that? Can we eradicate that by teaching people at an early age not to lie? But we teach our children to lie ourselves without knowing it, by teaching them Father Christmas and nursery rhymes, making out that people give things freely to each other, like Baba Black Sheep and things like that. It would be so difficult to try and teach us not to lie. And then the thing is, if we did manage to do it, and then someone works out that, wait a minute, I can lie, I don't need to tell the truth, and then it starts off again. So maybe it's part of us, because of our free will that we have, because we're not robots. And so we can never get around this problem unless we all agree that lying is not beneficial. But there will always be people who will need to lie or choose to lie. So yeah, maybe I have come to the end of this. This is the pursuit of truth. The truth of everything that goes around us is the fact that we can lie, and we can't discern which is truth or lie, because we can't see inside each other's hearts and minds to know whether they're telling the truth or lying. Take care, take it easy, God bless, and peace.